So, it's college. You're going to have to write. The important question is it more important to be perfect or is it important to be curious? So, today we're joined by an associate professor of English who teaches all kinds of students, from high schoolers to returning adults, even incarcerated students, and even a few traditional students. And he's here to reframe what you think college level writing actually means. So, welcome to Study with Me. I'm Loy from Online Learning, and today we're talking with Michael Gosselin, an Associate Professor of English here at Genesee Community College. And Michael teaches a really interesting range of students in all kinds of different cycles of their lives with different outlooks and different needs. So, Michael, I think we'd love to hear how you started working. Well, introduce yourself for us, and then, tell us how you started working with all these kinds of different groups of students.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Michael Gosselin. You might see me as Roger Gosselin or Roger Michael Gosselin. I'm the only Gosselin on campus. I do have a son, Michael, who graduated here a few years ago with a degree in computer-aided design, and he's very gainfully employed, living out near Buffalo. We're so proud of him. I started teaching. Well, I was managing a college bookstore in Boston.
Mm.
And I had a master's degree in English and composition, and someone in the administration was buying candy. And I happened to mention I had a master's degree, and he immediately offered me a class in what used to be called the Department of Continuing Education. I don't know if that's still a term that's used anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified, and I almost said no, but some part of me said yes. So I was given a class was offered at night in one of the city high schools, and it was all adults.
Mm-hmm.
So my first teaching experience was with what we would call non-traditional students. And I did that for a number of years, and then we moved to Rochester about 2001, and I started teaching part-time here at GCC, at Monroe Community College, Brockport, and a place called Everest Institute in Rochester, which was night classes with city adults. So it was a whole range of people. In fact, my first time teaching traditional age students was a real tough thing for me because I was so used to teaching adults.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was hired full-time here in 2010. And then 2011, I heard that GCC was starting a new program in Attica Correctional Facility. Yeah. With private funds, and starting off with only 2 classes. And our dean at the time, Karen Kovac-Allen, asked me if I would be willing to teach the college composition in the prison. And it was almost like she had read my mind, because it's something that somehow I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so delighted. And I went in, and I was one of the first professors to go into Attica since the 1980s or 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, we were doing the program on a shoestring. But then we partnered with the University of Rochester. They have a program called the Rochester Education Justice Initiative. And so I've been able to expand into Groveland Correctional, Wendy, Wyoming, and Orleans Correctional.
Nice.
In fact, I was in Attica last night, and I'll be in Orleans tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it sort of evolved.
So you just mentioned that when you first taught traditional age students, it was very, very difficult or very different. Can you, and I know this question is not on our list, but how is it different teaching the different kinds of students? Like, how do they approach things? Do they approach things differently?
Oh yeah. Well, they're the same in their anxiety level a lot of times when it comes to college, but they're different. Of course, life experiences are different,
Mm-hmm.
and brain. I don't know at what age the human brain finishes. Completely forming. I think for me it was 25.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a tough sell for me with the traditional age students the first time because I noticed that there was a lot of things lacking that I was used to having in the older students. You know, the experience, the interest in education, the willingness to yell at me, which was really very important for me. And the students, and incarcerated students, are really willing to, push back. And, so it was a challenge for me to work with the traditional age students because they just lacked some of the things that the older students had.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that anxiety piece. I think a lot of our online students, they might be returning adults or they might even be high school age students, and they have this fear of college writing. And they might think, well, I don't know if college is more difficult than high school, or they might think, well, I haven't written an essay in 20 years, or, what do you want those students to know about college writing?
Well, first of all, the anxiety you feel about writing is not your fault. It's sort of, you learned it. And the first thing I want students to know about college writing is that it's not what you think it is, probably. Somehow this word college has certain connotations, and it's not, I don't think it's what you imagine it is. And I expect that there are a lot of students who have either in high school or recently graduated high school that may have even been explicitly told what college writing is, and it's usually wrong. Right? I think a lot of the anxiety comes from what happens to students when they hit our public school system. I'm a believer in public education, but so much of what they hear in high school just makes them terrified of it. And so they're coming in with this idea of what they think college is. In fact, in the syllabus for English 101, in the course description, it says that the course draws on a variety of college-level sources. And I always stop there and ask the class, what do you think this means, college-level source? And they usually come up with things like textbooks and journal articles. But then I'll say, well, what about anime, right? What about video games? And they're like, no. What about Billie Eilish? And they say, no. And say, listen, this is a true story. Just today in class, in my 101 class, we read papers from students. One of them was on Billie Eilish. One of them was on BTS. I'm sure you would appreciate that, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of them was on the video game Geometry Dash. Another one was on Final Fantasy VII. So this nonsense of a college-level source, that's what terrifies students, this whole notion of what they think college is supposed to be. And they're surprised and hopefully happy when they learn that that's not the case. So a lot of this anxiety is somehow driven into them from other people.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about an example of one of the papers that you were using for a few years in your class was on music from a popular TV series.
I still use that.
You still
I use it this semester. I've used it every semester.
Right.
The music from BBC's Sherlock.
Right.
With Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch. I still use it. I still do.
Yes, Bumbleshoot Cucumbers and his co-actor there. So, would you say that is like the biggest misconception that students have is like what a college source is?
Yeah, what they come in thinking college is. Somehow these, I don't like to say, it's a cliche, preconceived notion, but they come in with these preconceptions about what college is, and a big part of my job is to sort of knock that out of them early on.
So, what do you tell them to try and get them to shift their mindset into, what you're expecting or what we are expecting in college writing? Like what words do you have for students who are thinking those things?
my first day of my English 101 classes in the fall is a special time for me because quite often it's the first experience of college a lot of the students have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't start off talking about writing. I start off with an audio test where I'll play some music.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's say, Hiccup's theme from How to Train Your Dragon, and I'll see who knows what it is. Right? Because when you tell them you're going to give a test, everyone perks up, right? Or Aerith's theme from Final Fantasy. Who knows what this is? And they're all into it, and they all get excited because they're like, I'm in college, but I know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all excited. And so I don't tell them that I'm going to reframe it. I just start doing it. And then hopefully they just come to realize that this is okay. This is an okay space for me to express and write about what I love.
Right.
Right. So, and then actually I had one student who told me that he spent the whole first week of class thinking he was in the wrong course because I didn't talk about writing at all. Right. In fact, the tagline of my blog is called The Wrong Font. And the tag is, what does any of this have to do with anything? Because that's what a student told me once. But then they say, okay, they realize after a while, they said, okay, now I see what he's trying to do, right? Trying to make us feel comfortable. And so I don't tell them, I sort of bring them in right, by doing that and try to surprise them.
So I'm going to go off the map a little bit. With your high school students, now it's a little bit different because they don't have a lot of life experience to draw on. What kind of things do high school students draw on in your classes? And I'm going to guess the anime is probably part of that.
It is. Well, they do have life experience, right? The first thing, the big thing that they draw on is their cultural experience, right? I tell them right away, I never will use the phrase popular culture because if it's popular, it's culture. So I just say these are culture references, and they will immediately start writing about things that they know. And there's all these complaints now that students aren't reading anymore. Yes, they are, but they're reading things that they like, right? And they're not just reading words, right? They're reading visuals, they're reading music, right? They're reading all kinds of things. So they do have a lot of experience. But also we do have a lot of students who have had trauma in their life. I had a paper just this week from a student that was the topic was she plays volleyball, but the paper was really about a deeply traumatic experience that she experienced. So they do have life experience. But they don't value it. They don't think that it matters. So that's so there is a lot of experience even with the ACE students and also homeschool students. So everyone has life experience that they can bring to a college assignment.
Right. So it's really just different kinds of experience,
Yeah.
different kinds of outlooks.
Well, look at our students. We have students. I have students who go to 4-H and do competitive chicken showing. Right? In fact, they have 3 this semester. But we also have students from Brooklyn. Right? And so they come from such a wide range of experiences. So they all have so much that they can share in a piece of writing.
All right. So I'm going to kind of take a hard turn here and go back to our outline a little bit. And we want to talk a little bit about approaching assignments, how a student who hasn't written in a while or maybe is not confident in their writing, and how they would approach, when you hand out an assignment, what do you hope that students do first?
I hope the first thing they do mentally is to try to understand the point. Right? Every prompt should have a reason. It should. So the first job is to try to understand why you're being given this assignment and try to get into the spirit of the assignment before you start worrying about the details and all this stuff. But practically speaking, when it comes to a writing assignment, first of all, also ask questions. If you don't know what you're supposed to do, please ask. Make sure you know. But the first thing you should do when it comes to an assignment, a writing assignment, like I say, you don't start writing by writing. You can't do a writing assignment if you don't have information and material to write about. So don't sit down and start writing immediately. That's like halfway through the process. You need to get stuff. Right? You need to do your research. You need to do your reading. I have whole collections on my computer of information that I mean to write about one day. So if you're panicked about writing, and you sit down to write and there's a blank screen, write the middle.
The middle.
Start with the middle.
Okay.
Start with the middle. Don't start by trying to write an introduction. Because you've got get all your information, do your research, do your reading, and start writing your paper in the middle, because that's just presentation, right? So there's that's just putting things together. By the way, English 101 is called college composition, not college writing.
Okay.
Right? Composition means to put stuff together. That's literally what it means, right? So it's not a writing class, really. It's a composition class.
I think, too, in a way, when you talk about, first of all, think about the point of the assignment. Why are you being given this assignment? It's kind of asking the student to do a little bit of detective work, to think more deeply beyond just the words that are on the page and say, okay, so why did my instructor actually hand me this assignment? What am I supposed to learn out of it?
Yeah.
And so it's a really kind of critical thinking exercise.
Yeah, well, you have to read it and think between the words. Right? There's an underlying idea, and a good prompt will spell that out. Right? So the student shouldn't have to dig for that, but that you have to understand why you're being given this assignment, and also try to get into the spirit of it, and please know that that your professors appreciate and enjoy creativity and being different. It's really something that's going to help you a lot and make your professors happy. Right? So try to not just understand what you're doing, but try to think, how can I make this creative and enjoyable for everybody? And really put some spirit into it.
Right.
And don't obsess over the letter of the law. Right? Think about the spirit of the law.
So 400 words is not as important as what those 400 words actually say.
Don't worry about word count. It's that's just quantitative stuff. It's not as important as what you put in.
Okay. So there's something that speaking of creative things, something that you've done with your students, and I got a chance to sit and listen to the presentations on it, and I was absolutely fascinated, was your white paper project, which is not English 101, but a different class, I think, right?
Correct. That's technical writing.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that, like what it is and how it came about?
Yeah. It's in my technical writing class, which I love, by the way, because like I tell the students, if you don't like to write, this class is for you. Right? Because at least half of it is not writing, but what it is, it's the capstone project for the semester, where we scaffold up to it. So they use every element of the semester, like writing, graphic design elements, double column, font psychology, color, images, pie charts, scatter plots, and it all goes in. It all goes in. So it's supposed to be the culmination of everything that we've worked on throughout the semester. And that's the thing about a white paper. It can be about anything, and it can look like anything. Right? There's no formal definition of what a white paper is. I read the history, and it turns out that they came out like in World War II, and they're called white papers because they're written on white paper, which is like, as opposed to what, But so it's just a culmination of all the skills I want them to build up to at that point, and it sounds nice, sounds official, and But the most important thing for that project for me is that it's real.
Mm-hmm.
The real problem with student writing in college is that it's busy work for most students, writing about things they don't care about for nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tracy Ford here, English professor, calls it the gray wall of teacher. And that's the problem. How can you possibly write if you don't have an audience in mind?
Right.
Right? As the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson said that. Right? You sit down to write to a loved one, and immediately, armies of words come into your head.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know what you're doing and why, it's just meaningless. So I make this a real project for that's actually usable.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the presentation, we do. I have the students present at the end of every semester. I don't force them, right? It's not public speaking, but we present because it's all about retention and recidivism of college students, community college students, and they do quantitative and qualitative research. They interview people,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell them this is going to be used. We're going to present and even send these to the administration, because the administration, of course, is extremely concerned about this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell them, at the end of this semester, put this on your resume or on your CV.
Mm-hmm.
Produce the white paper for GCC administration, a qualitative study on the recidivism rates in community colleges. Put that right on your CV.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds so great.
Yeah. Well, the words sound fabulous. But yeah, I was very impressed by the research that the students had done and the depth to which they seem to have gotten into it. And
Yeah, I'm particularly fond of some of the comments that the interviewees give. And I tell them, you don't have to censor, right? You can just...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that seems really fun. So that's a lot about college writing, and I think that it's nice to have you coming down and make it a little bit more approachable. When so many students, I think your gray wall of teachers is probably a really good.
Yeah, right. We have to get through that.
Get through that. But before we wrap up our podcast here, is there anything you would really like online students to know about college writing that we haven't talked about?
Just don't be intimidated. Whatever you think college writing is, you might be wrong. Right? It's not as scary as you think it is. I think in many ways writing in college might even be better than writing in high school, because it's not so rules driven in a lot of ways. I don't know any professors on this campus who will fail a paper because of bad grammar. I don't, right? That's not, there's bigger fish to fry, right? There's more stuff that we're after than whether you know how to use a comma. Right? Like I say, if you don't know how to use a comma by now, you never will. But it's okay, right? You'll be fine, right? You'll fall in love, you'll have a nice life, right? So, but people, that's what they panic about, right? College writing is about more than that. It's about you. It's about what you like. It's about how you make a statement and how you back it up with proof. And just try to enjoy it, and God forbid, have fun.
Forget about the 5-sentence sandwich paragraph thing.
Oh, well, today in class I compared a college paper to a package of double stuffed Oreos. Right? It's like every paragraph, right? It's like double stuffed Oreo. So but there is structure. It's not just open-ended. It's not poetry. There is a structure to a college paper. But also, once you learn the structure, it makes it easier for you. For instance, just briefly, here in the fall, we had a conference on higher ed in prison. They have it every year at a different campus, and it was here in the fall. And I wrote an abstract because I wanted to present. And so I sat down and I wrote an abstract in 5 minutes, and I emailed it off to the committee, And they emailed me back a week later and they said, clearly you've put so much time and energy into this, right? And I just laughed, and I was telling a dear friend of mine how funny it was, right? That I said, I just did this in 5 minutes. And he said, no, Michael, you've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that's because I know the process.
Right.
I've internalized it. And the same thing with a college paper. There is a process and there is largely a structure that you can use for any paper on this campus. It's like a birdhouse, right? The birds come and go. Birdhouse doesn't change. And once you learn that, you still express yourself, no question. Right? But it becomes so much easier when you become more comfortable with the conventions and the process of writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And just one last thing, that my first assignment of every semester in my 101 class, we just did this earlier today. I tell the students they can write about a piece of music or a movie or a book. I don't tell them what it has to look like. And almost every single time, they do it right. The core of their paper is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to pick up on some structure, which is why they're in my class.
Mm-hmm.
But the main part of it, the spirit of it, is correct. So you already know how to do this. Right? You just need to learn how to do it in a way that the college expects and values.
And it's not as hard as you think.
No.
Not as hard as you think.
And why do you worry about how bad your writing is in college if you haven't even taken a writing course in college yet, right? It's like that bugs me, you know. And your writing is fine. Don't say your writing is terrible, because it's not.
Yeah. We get the same problem with math, but that's a whole other fish to fry.
No.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And for our students, if you're listening and you want more support with your writing, I also want to mention that we do have a learning center here, offers tutoring that can help you with the writing process. And you can even, they have a service where you can email them your paper, and they will email it back to you annotated with, hey, here's our thoughts on it, which is kind of cool. I'm going to guess you can pretty much do the same thing in the online classes with your instructors as well. You send a paper in and get some feedback on it.
Well, that's why I wonder about if I'm supposed to send students to the tutoring center. It's like, but what's my job? You know, right? It's my job.
Yeah.
And I say, with the prompt, ask a question. If you don't know what you're supposed to do, ask your professor. If you still don't know, ask me.
Right.
So, I'll tell you. Right? So to everyone who's listening, if you have an assignment that you're worried about and you've spoken with your instructor and you still have questions, I'm in B275.
Okay. All right. So we've got lots of resources at GCC. We've got professors, we've got Learning Center, we've got all kinds of people who can help, and you don't need to be stressed out about your writing.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, if you're feeling creative, you talked a little bit about, not having an audience. We do have a student newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you know who you're writing for and why you're writing.
Yeah.
You're writing for students because you want them to know something.
Well, one thing I do is I tell students that you're writing for everyone else in this class, because I do share work. I tell students, if you don't want me to share your work, I won't. But so your audience in this class is not just me. It's everyone else in this class. So you can't write if you're not writing to anybody. It just will not work. I mentioned my blog. The last thing I wrote was in August. It was a review of the movie Sinners by Ryan Coogler, which is wonderful. Vampire history, 1920s. Anyway, because I don't know who my audience is. It's terrible to write like that. So I even wrote something called What I Learned About Writing by Not Writing. Right? And poor students, that's how they're stuck. Right? They don't know whom they're writing for.
Right.
Right? So they're writing for each other.
They're writing for each other.
Yeah.
Right, and you can use the student newspaper to practice that if you want.
Yeah.
And get some extra writing practice.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's our episode this week, and I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope you feel a little bit more comfortable about college level writing, whatever college
No.
level writing might happen to be. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking.
And now we get to share with you our mantra. We have a mantra for the podcast.
Okay.
Our mantra is progress, not perfection.
Mm.
Good one?
Well said.
All right.